Awesome. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Feel Goodness Friday. My name is Taylor, and I'm really excited to have another amazing chat about all things health and wellness, sharing our perspectives. So, today I have a very special guest who is joining me. I was actually her intern at Cancer Support WA. She's been a big inspiration to me, and I just feel like I'm always learning from her. And so I'm going to see if she is ready to join, and then I'll introduce her.
Hey!
Hi, Chandrika. How are you?
Oh, Taylor, good. Nice to see you.
I know, it's been so long since the last time we've chatted.
So long, half a world away, really, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. And thanks for, waking up and joining me this morning because I know it's 8 a.m. for you, where it's, what, 5 p.m. here now in Los Angeles.
Yes, and it wouldn't normally be a big deal for me to get up. I normally am a morning person, but this whole life in isolation thing, I've been, my circadian rhythm's a little bit off. I've been staying up later and sleeping in longer, and it's kind of nice in a certain way. It's certainly relaxed, a slower pace, but yeah. Anyway, I'm awake enough to chat with you today.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I want to just say, if you could just start by maybe, saying who you are and what you do and just a little bit of background info, so that way people know why you're so amazing.
Aw, thank you. Look, it's a long story, but I'll try and give you the short version. So my formal qualifications are I'm a naturopath, and along with being a naturopath, I've also been a yoga teacher for a long time. And quite early in my yoga career, I kind of integrated the two aspects and became a yoga therapist. So I brought a lot of the kind of health sciences understanding that I had from naturopathy and used it with yoga, using yoga as my main kind of medicine, I guess. But I'm also really open and interested in nutrition and complementary therapies. And really, what I work with people on these days is lifestyle. It's really lifestyle medicine, and I think that's what we're going to focus on today is kind of creating an anti-cancer lifestyle, because nowadays I am a researcher. So I'm doing my PhD and I'm focused on head and neck cancer particularly, but the kind of things that I'm learning about actually apply pretty well across lots of different types of cancer too.
That's awesome. Yeah, and when we met, I mentioned this right before you hopped on, but I was actually your intern at Cancer Support WA, and I just felt like our philosophies always kind of jived, where it's evidence based, and it's kind of marrying the two sides of like traditional and like holistic medicine alongside Western medicine and what people know as medical medicine, I guess is the words I'm trying to say. But I've just always really had good conversations with you, and that's why I wanted to have one here. And to start, what are some things that are involved in an anti-cancer lifestyle? Like, what are some of the main things that you discuss with clients? And
Yeah, so the kind of template that I would usually begin with my clients is to kind of find out a bit about them and their lives. And I use this model of the mix of six. So the mix of six are six lifestyle areas that we have a little bit of control over. I mean, I'm also a long-term meditator, and my philosophy does lead me to feel like there's a lot that we don't control. And part of what we work on is surrendering to what we can't control. However, there are some things when it comes to prevention of future cancer or prevention of recurrence of cancer. There are some lifestyle areas that we can have a bit of impact on our risk by modifying these lifestyle things. So I focus on diet. It's pretty obvious that food is important medicine when you're trying to prevent future
mm-hmm.
suffering. Exercise. Exercise is powerful medicine, and particularly the latest research shows how important it is in terms of cancer. It's remarkable. Stress management, sleep. So I've recently written a little blog post about sleep, and it's something I've been talking to people a lot about because I'm not the only one whose sleep cycle's gone a bit wonky in this strange time.
Absolutely.
And I'm also really interested and think it's important that we focus on social support, the love that people have. That's the environment where we can heal, is when we feel safe and supported. So figuring out who somebody's people are that will help them through this difficult thing of a health crisis or a health issue. And then the sixth part is environment. Things we can control in our environment include things we put on our skin, things we clean our houses with. We can do a little bit of modification of risk by minimizing our exposure to some of the carcinogens in the environment.
Mm-hmm. I really love, I mean, anytime I'm a big advocate for prevention. That's one of my mottos is I want to feel as good as I can for as long as I can. And that starts before you start feeling bad. So I'm all about like the tips and the advice that we can start looking at before there is even a, disease state or any symptoms alongside it. And I think that's often when we take our health for granted the most and we start, doing things that might not be the healthiest choices, whether that's physically or emotionally or mentally, because when there's no pain, you forget that you need to take care of yourself in those ways. So I'm a big fan of that. I wanted to, just because you are also an amazing yoga practitioner, teacher, I wanted to talk a little bit, if it's all right with you, about the benefits of different types of yoga, because I know I learned. Are you still there? Sorry, we cut out for just a second. Awesome. Um, I learned a little bit when I was just doing some work with you and your yoga page on Facebook. Uh, I didn't know too much outside of yoga that was taught in gyms before working with you. And there's so much benefits to meditation and mindfulness and yoga. And so I wanted to know if you could just talk a little bit about the benefits of different types of yoga or meditations that are really good for mental health as well in this time.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think that like any form of healing or medicine, you have to get the right dose and the right prescription. And so everybody's going to have an individual requirement for what will help bring them into balance. I think when life is unpredictable, as it is at the moment, well, it always is, but we're just more aware of it probably. I do think that meditation approaches where you allow things to arise and fall away are really good practice for not getting caught up in the stories that we tell ourselves. So anything that starts from that foundation of mindfulness, which is really kind of witnessing your own thought patterns without getting involved. There's a lot of really great research that's been done using functional MRIs. And so they can actually see, neuroscientists can see what parts of the brain light up when we have certain kinds of mental activity going on. When you become a more practiced meditator, and it is a practice, it doesn't happen perfectly all the time for anyone, it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it, it's always a practice. But as you become more skillful at it, they can see in your brain that your ability to focus on one thing at one time improves, and all of the storytelling links that we have. So when we get kind of, we might say triggered if it was an old trauma, or when we get drawn into a story that we really believe and we're believing everything we think, then all kinds of pathways are lighting up in our brain. That's fine. You can have your storytelling times, but it's when those thoughts are repetitive and ruminative that they often become a problem for people. So if you're trying to go to sleep at night, for example, practicing a simple mindfulness technique, like just watching those thoughts come and go. And I always like to use a little bit of analogy or a little bit of poetry, something that speaks to the not so intellectual parts of our mind. I think about these thoughts as being like leaves on a stream. And that's a pretty common analogy you'll hear in meditation teaching, is to let the thoughts drift by like thoughts on a stream. So you become slightly more detached. You're the observer of these thoughts, and you start to separate, start to have a space where you can be responsive instead of reactive to every thought you think.
I like that. I've used a few different, meditation apps before to kind of help with those practices. I've heard before you could also see them either as boats passing on a horizon, or I've seen one that I talked about the other day was someone told me you can think of them as cars passing by, but anytime I give it too much of I guess, something that's too close to me, then I start thinking, oh, my car is dirty, my car needs a wash. I'm like, my brain just goes on a totally different tangent. So I like the leaves. That one I can try out.
Yeah, so it's got to be the right analogy for that person as well. It's going to work for you.
And that's why you said it's practice. Everyone has like a different need. I'm like, they're not cars for me. Cars get me too wound up, I guess.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
So
So
going back
in that,
to like, oh, sorry, go on.
so I was remembering that your question was also about different types of yoga. Do you want me to
Hmm.
go down that track too?
Yeah, if you don't mind
Yeah.
just
So
talking a little bit about that.
yeah. So again, it's really about what you need on any given day, and I think as the years go by as a yoga practitioner, I've started to trust myself more. But I understand when you first start out, people don't know necessarily what feels right to them. And so it's a bit of a try it and see what happens. If you try a really vigorous kind of vinyasa style practice, that can be fantastic if you've been feeling anxious because you get to burn up some of those stress hormones. So it's the same kind of benefits as exercise. But then, of course, yoga has more than just exercise. It also has mindful self awareness. And normally, any balanced practice, anyway, you might go from quicker, more vigorous movements eventually to finding rest and stillness. So that can be a really good starting point for people who feel a bit kind of keyed up. Start with something more vigorous, start with vinyasa, especially if you're feeling quite physically well. But then there are other times when it's most appropriate to go slowly and gently and to do practices like restorative yoga. So this is a practice that I absolutely love. I love it when I have my period, the first couple of days. I don't feel like jumping around. I'm not a carefree tampon commercial girl. I want to lie around and be nurtured. And so that's an amazing skill to have in your life, to be able to nurture yourself when you need it. For the people who are in isolation, truly in isolation on their own, I imagine that this is a skill that would really be helpful because, we long for touch, we long for comfort from others. And restorative yoga is a bit like giving yourself a big cuddle. You get to have this sense of pressure on your body that is really calming. So by resting over bolsters, or if you happen to have like sandbags, the
Hmm.
weight of a sandbag on your lower back, or if you've got your feet up the wall, putting a sandbag on the top of your feet just helps you feel so grounded, so connected to the earth, and it slows everything down in terms of your thoughts and in terms of your nervous system. It switches you into this sense of being safe, and in that safety, that's the space where healing can happen. So I think there's important times when restorative practice is a good idea. I also think yin style practice helps us
Hmm.
build resilience for difficult times. So yin style practice looks a bit like it's going to be restorative, but it's actually not. So you have more stretch sensation. Have you done some yin yoga?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. hence the chuckles. How did you find it?
It was really, it was something new. It was something I had never tried before, and it was restorative in a very different way. It was a lot more challenging than I expected going into it, but at the same time, it was uh, probably one of the most profound yoga experiences I've had in a while. And I think it's because I got into a cycle of going to a lot of those more power flow type classes. And while they're fantastic for movement and breath work, I really wanted something that was going to take me to like a different level. And I think that's what I found in yin yoga. And I've really been resonating with it a lot, especially like while I've been here in self isolation, it's been pushing me in a way that's made me feel very good, while I'm at home.
Yeah, I think so. I think yin is really great for making space and making time. So it stops that sort of rush that I think we can all get drawn into, because even in this weird situation we're in, the pace of life can still be quite fast. I don't know about you, but I've been on so many Zoom meetings and so many interactions coming through. They're lacking that real heart connection that you get from face to face stuff. And so it does sort of churn up the nervous system and get you into this quite kind of, for me, a bit of an overdrive. So a yin style practice is testing the edges of what you can stay comfortable with, even as it becomes increasingly uncomfortable over time, to hold those poses and to let gravity do the work. And I've had yin people before say, don't call it stress, but it is a kind of stress on the tissues. It's a load on the tissues that really does go through the layers of your connective tissue. That's how it feels, and that is what the theory is, that you're going to access this network of fascia, this connective tissue, which as you access it, as you place this load or this stress upon it, becomes more hydrated. And so when you finish a yin practice, you've done multiple things that are really great for you. You've slowed your thinking, you've created space in your mind and space in your body, And when you come up and try to walk afterwards, what I see is students kind of look like they're all loosey-goosey, like they've just, had a tropical holiday or something, because the tissues have become more hydrated. There's a sense of juiciness in the joints, juiciness around the joints, in the ligaments and tendons, and the movement ability becomes greater. So in terms of a rehab or an adjunctive practice for other kinds of exercise, I think it's really fantastic, because most kinds of exercise, very musculoskeletal kinds of exercise, tighten you up and dry you out as well. And as we age anyway, we're kind of drying out. Our tissues do get less hydrated. So I think yin is wonderful medicine for lots of people in lots of different times.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you for all of that. I really enjoy talking yoga with you, obviously. But I do want to touch a little bit more about anti-cancer and just anything. How has your approach maybe evolved or changed? And what do you see as a balanced, healthy lifestyle that you can, and of course this is prefacing with everyone's an individual, and so please go seek your own like professional health advice if you have specific queries, but just kind of more generalized, what is your philosophy on finding balance and leading an anti-cancer lifestyle?
Yeah. So look, it has evolved over the years, Taylor, and I think you witnessed some of that when you were an intern at Cancer Support WA. And it's not just me personally who's evolved. I think a lot of complementary therapies and naturopathic practitioners have evolved as evidence has come to light about really how potent lifestyle can be to prevent cancer. So for me, I first learnt that there were some limits to what I'd learnt in naturopathic college when my dad had lung cancer, and I wanted to load him up on all kinds of antioxidants, which, some people would already have known that was wrong, but however many years ago that was, 18 years ago, I didn't really know that that wasn't going to be the right thing. And it was through an interaction with my dad's oncologist who said, actually, no, because we're treating him with radiation. We want free radical damage to happen. We don't want to dampen that reaction down with antioxidants. Somebody taking the time to just briefly explain that helped me realize, I have to look a bit deeper. It's not just certain things create an anti-cancer effect in your body. When you have the disease, you have to really work to integrate with the conventional treatments and support them so they can work as well as possible. I find myself from time to time on different pages and forums with naturopaths, and there is still a kind of old school versus new school philosophical approach. So my approach definitely has moved from the old school, let's throw all our herbs and supplements at the disease, which is not really what old school naturopathy was about. Old school naturopathy was really holistic, but it got lost somewhere, I think. Mm-hmm. So the new school is much more integrative. It's about understanding research and reading that research carefully, and then figuring out, well, what do we have in our natural therapies toolbox that can support these processes, the biological processes, but also importantly, the emotional and psychological processes. So from that, I've come to this understanding that what we can best do is support the terrain. And this is old school naturopathy, the idea that our physical body has all of these different environments, all of these biomes and microbiomes. It's probably quite a popular topic in recent times. It's not just in your gut, it's everywhere. Your skin has a biome. In fact, there's thought now that your brain has its own unique biome, its own unique bacterial picture there. So if we can support the terrain, if we can make the environment in the physical body and through the mind as well, because the mind and body are always interacting, it's all connected, if we can make that inhospitable to disease, then that's one thing we can do. Mm-hmm. If we do then get a disease, because sometimes it's pure bad luck, it's not anything you could have done or not done, and I think that's really important that people understand. It's not your fault if you get a cancer or any other kind of illness. It's not your fault. Life is random and there's so much we can't control. So if you do get that, then we have amazing health professionals who can direct their treatments against the tumour itself, against those cells that have gone wrong. But what natural therapists can do best is continue to support the terrain, to make all the healthy cells as vibrant and healthy as they can be, support the immune system. I think that's been a bit controversial lately as well, people talking about boosting the immune system. It's half true that you can boost it, but you want to support it. You want it to support it to work optimally, not to overwork. And some of the newer conventional treatments work on the immune system as well, like immunotherapies. So you do want to integrate with that and not undermine the work of those drugs and other treatments. So yeah, that's kind of my philosophy on cancer, is to support the terrain and to support the individual to live as well as they can with the disease, whether the disease is curable, whether they might go into remission and live a long and happy, healthy life without cancer, or what is more common, what I see a lot, is people who end up living long term with a manageable disease. So just like any other chronic illness, you know, they can work with it. They're not completely free of it, but it doesn't mean they can't have a fantastic quality of life and do everything that matters to them.
Absolutely. And that again like kind of goes back to, my philosophy of like feeling as good as you can for as long as you can. So that's for, young people who are relatively healthy and don't have diseases that want to continue feeling as such, as well as the people who do have chronic diseases can definitely adhere to some of these tips and living a supporting the terrain through lifestyle choices and being able to feel as good as they can in the context of how, their disease works. So I really like the supporting the terrain and the integrative approach. And that's everything that I'm studying right now as well. I'm going to be a student forever at this point, but I'm still in school studying as well. And, and that's exactly what I want to see, is that kind of bridging that gap and seeing these therapies work synergistically to benefit the patient as much as possible. So that's really amazing. I have one other little aspect that I wanted to touch on, and I didn't bring this up with you previously, so sorry to put you on the spot, but you did just post about it on your Facebook, and I really loved the article you posted. And it was talking about body image and cancer patients. And one, I think that's just a wonderful topic to talk about in general. During self-isolation, I'm a big I like to talk about people, how their mental health is affecting their physical health, because they're absolutely tied together. When you're stressed out and your hormones are out of whack and all this stuff, you can physically feel less than you think you should because you're eating a perfect diet or whatever. But I think there's a lot of people in self-isolation thinking they're eating too much, or they're so conscious of it, or they're not moving as much. And there's a lot of body image negative body image ideas being passed around at the moment. But then I saw the article you posted, which was specifically talking about cancer patients and body image. And me never having cancer, I had never really sat down and thought about it. And so reading the article was really eye-opening to me and made me view things from a very different perspective. And I just wanted to get your thoughts or ideas surrounding that article, or surrounding just body image in general, and how that can affect us, and things that we can do to maybe work on how we view ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah, look, it's a huge topic, isn't it? And all of us, no matter how evolved, how educated, we're all swimming in these beauty images, this diet culture that is really pervasive. And it has been unfortunate to see quite a lot of memes. And I know they're meant, good humoredly, about, you better try on your work clothes because they'll shrink. This sort of joking, but there's an edge to it about how terrible it would be for your body to change. But the thing is that bodies change. They change all the time. We just don't notice because we live in them moment to moment, day to day. We don't realize the effect that time and gravity and life has on our bodies. And if they didn't change, that would be weird. That would all be very kind of Benjamin Button going backwards. So we want to work on acceptance of the natural changes that happen. And of course, it's totally fine if you feel like you want to change something, you want to rev up your activity levels, or you want to alter your diet. Of course, there's lots of good and healthy reasons why people want to do those things. But what we want to be mindful of is not doing it out of a sense of self-hatred or a sense of thinking that we're not good enough. So when it comes to the cancer experience, this is the same issues that everybody else faces. It's just really highlighted by the drastic and dramatic and quick changes in appearance that people can go through. So the statistics, and I haven't got the numbers handy to me, but it's around about 30% of people gain weight during cancer treatment. Now, in some ways, that's a positive because the more you've got on your body, the more extra flesh you've got, the more your survival chances actually go up. So losing weight during treatment is a really bad sign for your ability to tolerate the treatment and to see it through to completion. So actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of a survival thing that our bodies do to hold on to some weight and to put on some extra when we go through something as traumatic as a cancer experience. I've also been reading and writing a lot about what happens post-surgery. And I've had my own experience of this. In fact, the first article that I put out for publication as part of my PhD was a self-reflective article, which is not usually what happens. But in the first year of studying intensively with people with head and neck cancer, I found that I needed to get some surgery done on my own face. You probably know, and anyone that follows me probably knows, so I'm really open about it. I've had extensive surgery for skin cancer. And so in the end of 2018, I had my cheek removed. So there was so much basal cell carcinoma in my cheek that the surgeon said, you know, I can't tell where one cancer ends, the next begins. It's going to be radical surgery. Now, what happens in the health system is fantastic. You get really great treatment from really skilled professionals, but there's not much support for what goes on internally. So nobody told me anything about what to expect, how I would look. I knew he was a plastic surgeon and that he would do his best to give me a symmetrical face afterwards, but I really had no concept of how big the scarring would be or anything like that. Going out in public after that was uncomfortable. It was different. People stared, people noticed, people in just normal interactions would ask awkward, uncomfortable questions. And my sons had some funny responses. They were like, you need to tell them that you got attacked by a tiger, or, you know, something silly, or tell them, you know, you should see the other guy, because people say silly things and make you feel awkward about it. But that awkwardness is really about the outward projection. It's about the other. The solution, I believe, it's not a solution, but the way to live with your body image, whether you've had disfiguring treatments or whether you just have, you know, imbibed this cultural norm that says you have to look a certain way, either way, the only way I can see to get okay with that is self-compassion. You have to go inside yourself and feel from the inside and recognize our common humanity, that everyone deals with these things, that hardly anybody, I'm sure even the supermodels, don't wake up and think, oh, I'm so happy to be in this great body. People beat themselves up and that is normal. What we can do is remedy that by kindness, by feeling into our inward experience and enriching our lives from the inside out. So focusing in on what you value, what matters to you, and what actions you can take that reflect those values. That takes all the emphasis off how it looks to be doing whatever you're doing in life. And so coming back to the yoga thing, yoga is a really good tool for that kind of interoception, for feeling what you feel from the inside and making that your primary point of reference rather than what does it look like on the outside.
I really like that. And I've noticed just in my own practice and in my own life that everything is definitely connected. So when I am moving often and I'm doing a lot of mindfulness or meditation, when I'm more conscious about the present moment, when I'm doing things that genuinely make me happy, not because I have to. So, you know, when I'm talking about exercise with people, it doesn't always mean I'm going to go on a 5K run. It might just mean that I want to stretch or I want to dance in my room, or I want to, you know, work on whatever goal it is. Or maybe I don't want to exercise that day. And when I'm genuinely in tune with what my body needs at the moment, I find myself to genuinely be a lot happier with the physical appearance. And that has nothing to do with anything that's changed from yesterday. It just has to do with me being in a better mental state. And I think that's of course easier said than done, and that comes with a lot of other work that I've done in my past as well. But it's important to just be conscious of, you know, when you're feeling the overwhelm and the spiral, to know what can, you know, kind of bring you out of those negative thoughts. And that might be different for everyone. It might be doing a hobby that you really enjoy to, you know, kind of find your way out of that negative space in that moment. And then it's, you know, it is long-term practice though. It's not something that happens overnight. You don't just wake up and go like, man, I'm perfect today, huh?
Yeah, that's right. It's a journey, it's a process, and we're always kind of in and out of those influences. So when I said that one of my mix of six categories, one of the factors I look at with people is environmental toxins, that also applies to the kind of environments that you put yourself in mentally. And, you know, right now, especially, I think people are spending more time on social media than perhaps they did when they had to go somewhere in their days.
Hmm.
And so we're exposed to lots of different philosophies, lots of different belief systems. I think it's important that we remember we have some control over what we're exposing ourselves to, over the environment that we create mentally and emotionally for ourselves. So that's a really good thing to do from time to time, is to filter your news feeds and unfollow anyone that makes you feel rotten about yourself for any reason. You
Hmm.
know, they can have their journey, and if their journey is about, you know, getting a ripped six pack, let them do that. But you don't have to. If that doesn't make you feel happier, more fulfilled, more able to live your life fully, then just don't follow them. Unfollow, mute, delete, get them out of your environment, because you have some control over your mental environment.
Absolutely. And I know Hamit's watching right now. But one thing that we always talk about is you are like you become who you hang out with, and who you hang out with includes what you're watching on television or what you're reading or what you're seeing. And you do take on those kind of emotions, or you take on that physicality or whatever, whoever you're hanging out with. So just like your friends and your family, if you're watching a lot of negativity, or if you're seeing things that aren't, your goals, or things that resonate with you in terms of living a balanced and healthy lifestyle, it can absolutely have an effect on your mental health. So
Yeah, and there's even been some research done around this idea of, you know, being inspired. So they call it Fitspo, you know, where you see people who look super fit. And, you know, I watched the last season of Survivor, and I love to see athletes and dancers and yogis and people that have really refined their physicality. It's a beautiful thing to look at. But the research showed that it's actually demotivating for lay people, common people who are not elite athletes. It's demotivating to be exposing yourself to that all the time, because we're aware of the gap between ourselves and those elite practitioners of certain sports or disciplines. So if that's demotivating, then, you know, you can see it, like you said, maybe give yourself a little bit of exposure because you're interested, but then tune it out so that you can really live from inside
yeah,
first.
I love that. I follow because I love running, and one of my goals is at some point I'd love to run an ultra marathon. And that's still a while away. I've only done one full marathon, but I do follow a lot of ultra runners. But there's one specifically that I follow, and I think her name, I couldn't even pronounce it. I'll link it somewhere. But she's very inspiring, because she's probably the slowest ultra runner you'll ever see. And she always posts her times and she posts her trails, but she gets it done. But she fought, like, she usually ends last, or like but she does it, and she's probably one of the most inspiring ones I follow, even though I follow a lot of elites who can run 100, 200-mile race, and then she does the same race. It just takes her twice as long, and I'm like, that's gonna be me one day. I'm gonna finish the race even if I'm the last person. But
Yeah, and
uh,
you're admiring them much more than the outcome. You're admiring the process, and that is something that we can be inspired by. Admiring other people's journeys and processes, especially when they show us a little bit of the flaws and all, that's much more inspirational than the kind of perfected, glossy, edited end product. The other thing about the exercise is that it's the behavior that matters. So it's actually, even if people are motivated to do it because of how they look or how they think they'll look if they do it more, it doesn't really matter what motivates you. The exercise itself is still really good medicine. I hosted recently for Solaris, who you interned with us, Rob Newton, Professor Rob Newton, who is one of the leading exercise scientists. He's based here in Western Australia, and he's always a great inspiration because he talks about things like the particular chemicals that your muscles secrete. They secrete these chemicals called myokines. So it's just a cytokine. It's a piece of information, cellular information, but that in itself slows the growth of tumours. So he's done some amazing research with men with metastatic prostate cancer, where their prostate cancer has gone into their bones, and that would normally be, you know, a very bad prognosis once it's in the bones. And particularly one of the things that happens is that you lose muscle mass when your cancer is metastatic. It chewing up all of your nutrients. And then people often won't exercise because they're feeling rough from other treatments or whatever. His studies show that men with metastatic prostate cancer can gradually increase the load on their body and get trained up to a point where they can do big kangaroo jumps across a gymnasium. And that impact, so I'm not suggesting anyone does that with metastatic cancer, by the way, that's under supervision with an exercise physiologist. Over time, though, it is possible to rebuild strength and rebuild fitness, even with a disease that could be progressing. But the exercise has such a potent anti-cancer medicine within it. Your body makes its own anti-cancer medicine through exercising, that they've actually slowed the growth of the tumours. Some of them have even had some reversal of the cancer. So it's possible, and we can do these things. So exercise up to your own capacity. And that's going to look very different for everybody. So you can do your own kind of self-perceived effort. One of the kind of general rules is you should still be able to talk, although the people that I run with can talk and I can't talk when I'm running. So I still try to keep up with them, but I don't worry about the talking bit. They're lucky if they get it out of me as they're going.
That's funny. That's great. I'm the same way though. I like to run with friends, and I'm always just like, you can chat all you want, just know that that's not going to happen on my end. But that's really amazing studies.
He and his team just continue to research the medicine that is in exercise. So whatever drives you to do it, that is kind of secondary, because the behavior itself has some fantastic healing benefits to you. But then if we can bring the rest of the mix of 6 in and think about, maybe running with a friend or having social support in your life in other ways, that also helps you to be motivated in a positive way to be well, so that you can do the things that matter to you. Minimizing those environmental toxins and managing your own stress levels. And there's lots of tools that we can develop to help us manage those stress levels. So I talked about mindfulness as a really key tool to having that more responsiveness, more psychological flexibility. And so that's where the kind of mind-body thing, I find it gets really cool. Sort of like, so we want to practice yin yoga, we want to practice different forms of yoga because we want our bodies to be supple and adaptable and able to respond to life comfortably. And the same thing with our minds. We want to be flexible, responsive, able to figure things out and be creative. And in times like this, or times like when you have a health crisis, there's a tendency to be pushed down into your survival mode. The more we've practiced these self-care skills, stress management skills, the more our default methods in our mind will go to the healthy pathways rather than the survival stuff, which often drives not such health-promoting behaviours.
Absolutely. That's really amazing advice. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on while we're just chatting here? And really, thank you so much for chatting. Everything's been so interesting. I didn't know which way this was gonna go, but you brought some really amazing information. So thank you so much, Chandrika.
I didn't know which way it was going to go either. And as you know, I'm really interested in lots of different areas of health and well-being, so I can go lots of directions. I guess we've kind of underemphasized the actual nutrition aspect, and being that we're on the turmeric latte page, it's probably quite important to note that there's not one perfect diet that is a perfect anti-cancer diet. People are always looking for it. People are selling a lot of books and products based on it, but there isn't one perfect anti-cancer diet. There is, however, a body of epidemiological evidence. Everybody's an epidemiologist these days. They understand population health much better than we used to. But there is evidence that shows that having more diversity, so if you think about your microbiome, the kind of catch cry for that is 40 different plant foods a week. And having an emphasis on those plant-based foods. It doesn't mean everybody has to be vegetarian or vegan. Personally, I think there are many benefits to doing that. But if that's not right for the individual for any reason, philosophy, culture, history, health, there can be reasons why you want those animal products to still stay in your diet. But you can do that with lots of plant-based foods around them. So ample plants, eat the rainbow, have 40 different plants a week, get that diversity. Plenty of fiber is important, unless you have a condition that means you have to watch that. So there's always a disclaimer, because there's different diet for different people. But I think thinking about keeping your blood sugar fairly steady and thinking about having a nutritional pattern that is basically anti-inflammatory is really helpful. So your turmeric lattes are a great thing to have in your diet for that reason. I'm not trying to sell them for you, but
I
but you
appreciate
know,
it.
it's a really great example of a food that is also a medicine, and all of our food can also be healing power for us, can also be a kind of medicine. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. My mom and I talk all the time. You know, before there was so much specificity maybe in diets, my grandma would, or my great grandma would always say, eat the rainbow. There has to be at least four different colors on your plate. And that's just such a, you know, they knew, like they knew there had to be a benefit to it without even know the science behind it. And now that we do know a lot of the science behind it, it just makes it even more incredible when it's like, oh yeah, my great grandma knew what to do. And then, you know, a lot of things nowadays are a little bland colored, and you have to, you know, add your capsicums, or you have to add your carrots, or you have to, you know, add a bit of color to your plate and remember how beneficial. And also, one thing that I always stress is I think for a while, and it kind of still happens now, everyone thinks green everything, and greens are great. They're super good, but they think green is the healthiest everything, like juices, smoothies, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, you know, blueberries are real good, and so are carrots, and so are, you know, apples, and, you know, like it doesn't just have to be green, green, green all the time. So I try to, I like to eat the rainbow. That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it just reminds you too that, you know, celery juice might be having its moment, but that's not the only thing to consume. And yeah, anytime there's a really overly simplistic idea for a very complex condition like cancer, I think that should raise a kind of skeptical red flag for people to think, well, it can't be that simple. There's not one food, and humans can't survive on just one food. On many different types of eating approaches. So I would also remind people not to beat yourself up, especially if you are quarantined or in self-isolation and your diet is not optimized at the moment. Don't worry about it. We draw nutrients from whatever we can find. We're incredibly good at that. This is part of human adaptation. So don't stress over it. Eat mindfully though. Try to, you know, savor the food. Try to be relaxed when you're eating the food. Try to share the food with others. And I know that might be difficult for some people right now, but you know, take your eyes off the screen for a while. Maybe look out at the sky and the birds, and just feel into what you're doing when you're eating that food, and you will get something from almost any kind of food that way.
Yeah, especially when you're not standing up and stressed and frantic and your digestive system isn't working optimally when you're in this kind of, you know, oh, I have to eat and run state. So, really good to sit down and eat your meals. You know, even if you are alone, just looking out the window, putting down the phone, putting down even, I'm probably guilty more of putting down the book because I can get distracted and be like reading and eating at the same time. And it's good to just be. And there was something else that I read recently about how much we consume, you know, in terms of music or podcasts or audiobooks, how we're always listening to something. And there's a lot of benefit to just turning it off for a few minutes and, you know, just eating and just being present. And I did that the other day, and it felt a little weird because I have been kind of go, 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 and, you know, playing lectures while I'm doing the laundry and stuff. So I was just like, I'm not going to put headphones in my ears. I'm just going to eat. And I think I really needed it. And it really helped me refocus and recenter. So sometimes you just kind of need to tune it all out for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so, so much, Chandrika. Please, where can people find you in general if you want to just say, you know, Instagram, Facebook? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I am pretty easy to find. So my business pages are Surya Health, and I also have a professional page for myself as a practitioner on Facebook, which is Chandrika Gibson ND. So yeah, follow me there. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm all over the place. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook probably the main places to catch up with what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm posting a fair bit on my Chandrika Gibson ND Facebook about the PhD journey, because I know there's some people that are interested in what I'm studying and what I'm learning as I go. And that's also going to form a part of my PhD actually, as a kind of reflexive diary. So there's some videos and there's some writing and there's some sharing of different information as I come across it there. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with anyone that's interested in these things. I am available for one-on-one cancer wellness coaching. Obviously, that's all online these days. Yeah, and I've got some lovely yoga programs coming up as well for those of you interested in becoming yoga teachers or adding yoga skills to what you can offer your friends and family. My training organisation is Wisdom Yoga Institute. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can connect with me over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And the last thing, since this is Feel Goodness Friday, I just like to end with just what's one thing you're grateful for this week?
Oh, there's lots of Katie's birthdays, and last night we did a little Zoom looking for quiz night at home. We used Kahoot. That was really, really fun. So I'm grateful for still being able to connect with my friends, even though I can't see them in person right now.
Awesome. That's a good one. We did a quiz night too. We did it tropical themed, and that's always a real fun way to connect. Awesome. Well,
Fantastic. And this has been a fun way to connect with you too, Taylor. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And I'm so glad that we've kind of kept in touch a little bit throughout the years. It's been very nice seeing everything that you're up to, and I love all the articles you share. I try to read them all. So thank you so much for your information, and thank you so much for just coming on today and having a chat.
Thanks for having me. I'll catch up with you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for Feel Goodness Friday today. I love Chandrika, and I'm so happy I got to chat with her. Maybe we'll have her on again at some point. As always, we take suggestions for things you would like to see talked about. You can leave comments on our posts. We have a special guest every Friday come so we can get different health perspectives on mental, emotional, physical health, all things, share knowledge on areas that we are passionate about. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next Friday. Bye.